I'm Adam. Thank you very much for inviting me along today. As I said, I'm sorry for people that weren't here earlier. I've come along to give a little bit of a talk about, as we see, top tips for finding a development job in London and sort of looking at your CV. I know some people are experienced developers, some people not so much. I do a lot of community work. By that, I organise software development meetups for people. It's quite agnostic in terms of development skill, but it's kind of focused on where people are from and the language that they speak. So I hold meetups for Italian developers, Portuguese-speaking developers, Polish developers, French developers, and I've been talking to guys about sort of Spanish developer meetups as well. A lot of the tips may be sort of leaning more towards the different type of CV that you will find. The example that I'm going to show you in a little while is actually from an Italian guy and how we changed his CV to better sell him into the opportunities he was looking for, and it 100% worked. He was not necessarily struggling to find work because he's a good developer, but his CV wasn't really selling him. I actually got an offer and he accepted a new job today. So the tips that I can give you do work in terms of his CV. I am quite focused, just to give you a bit of background about myself, I have been sourcing developers since 2005. I do have a computing background. I did computing and psychology at university, which randomly have worked out very well into the career that I've ended up in. But I run AB Recruit, which is my initials. It took me 3 days to come up with that because every other domain was taken that I could think of. But yeah, I have been sourcing developers since 2005. I recently worked out that I have looked at in excess of probably about 100,000 CVs since 2005. So what I'm trying to give you a bit of insight into is how a recruiter looks at your CVs. I know a lot of people don't like recruiters, but unfortunately sometimes we are a necessary evil in this world. And as a result, I'm trying to give you some tips on sort of how to register your CV in development role. So what the recruiters look for in CVs. So we take a cursory glance to assess CVs and profiles. The way I sort of explain this is, as developers, you can take glances through code, whereas I would have to read every line back to front. We don't really read CVs in depth. You know, we can glance at a CV and think, yeah, that looks right for this job, that job. So things you need to make sure that you put on, things such as your name. Crazy, but I have had CVs with no name on them, so it's quite difficult when you pick up the phone. Leading on to phone number. Some people do leave their phone number off of their CV. Sometimes there are reasons behind that. If you're working and you're getting an abundance of phone calls, your employer is going to be a little bit suspect as to why you're getting so many phone calls. But it is preferential to put it on there. Your email address. I have got on there address and closest train station. The reason I put both there is some people aren't 100% happy with putting their full address on their CV. If you could just put a train station or a postcode, it helps us to understand where the jobs are. Some people might not live in London. For instance, myself, I live in Essex. So positions in southwest London for me, if I were looking for a job, would be absolutely non-commutable. So it's just good to give us an idea of distance for positions. Something that I'm sure you guys will be very familiar with is links to your profile on LinkedIn, Stack Overflow and GitHub. The first of those, LinkedIn, I like to see a LinkedIn profile personally, just because it's nice to sort of see a background of the person, and sometimes a picture as well, you know, put a face to a name. But Stack Overflow and GitHub, in the last 2 to 3 years, have got pretty massive in terms of looking for a position and looking for a job. Particularly, I think at entry level, it's quite important to put those on there so people can actually see some of your code and get an understanding of how you code, the type of code that you put together. It doesn't matter what, but personal projects are always really beneficial. It just gives them a really good idea. Personal projects, I personally feel, are very important to a CV. You guys are all here this evening. You clearly, I assume, have day jobs and have come into this evening thing to brush up on code or get involved in coding. If you're working on personal projects, in my experience, people that work on personal projects tend to be better coders. They are passionate about coding. They want to be coding even in their spare time. So listing personal projects is very important. I spoke to a guy yesterday who's working in one of the banks and doing a lot of VBA work, and he wants to do C#. And I asked him, have you got any personal projects that you're working on? He said, no. And I put the question I put to him was, well, would you hire you if you just said that you wanted to work with C#? So it's very important to work with C#. I've seen a few Ruby books kicking about today. If Ruby is something you want to do some personal projects and put them into GitHub so people can see them. Personal statement, big believer in it, just to talk about what you're looking for. I'm looking for a Ruby role. I enjoy coding in Ruby. I like this framework. I'm looking for C#. I like MVC. I'm working with Visual Studio. It just gives a little insight into what you're about. So we're looking at, we have a cursory glance, put the details onto your CV. Sorry, I completely jumped over skills and matrix. By that, and I will show you an example of a CV in a moment, by looking at a skills matrix, what I'm sort of trying to get an understanding for is just a grid. So if you put a grid into your CV with the skills that you feel you're best at and strongest at, and rank them in terms of experience. Some people like to do sliding scales because they might have worked for 8 years on certain languages, but not really gone very deep, but 2 years deep experience in another area. So what I tend to say is it's entirely up to you how you present the skills matrix, but it is a really good thing to put on your CV. When I say cursory glance, you can see straight away what this person does. And fundamentally, that means they're going to be approaching you about the right kind of jobs.
When you say ranking, I'm interested in that, because what's a good way to do a ranking? And it's like, should you be should you be a bit more confident about what you do? I mean, I'll put things on sometimes with CVs, like say 6 out of 10. And sometimes I think, oh God, perhaps that just sounds awful. It's kind of one of those ones that's a little bit dubious, to be fair. If you're sort of, it's difficult. What I tend to say is that nobody really should be put in 10 unless you have 15 years experience and you've been writing your own frameworks, for instance. You shouldn't really be putting down 10s. But if it's more of a subjective thing, if you feel that your skills are a 6, so long as you can justify the 6, that's fine. It's when people put 9. I mean, I get people that are coming out of university and rating themselves 9 on Visual Studio, for instance, and I think, well, okay, you might be really good. The chance of you coming out of uni and being able to teach senior developers things would be very minimal. In that situation, what I would probably suggest would be some kind of, like a multi-matrix, if you like. So you're talking about years experience and skill level. So maybe if you did something where it showed that you had 6 months and a 6, that's fine. If you said you had 12 years and you were a 6, I'd be asking questions as to why. Does that answer your question? Yeah, no, it's an interesting approach I've used as well. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. So let's talk tech CV. The things that you need to include on your CV. I know a lot of this is maybe very basic, but you'd be surprised at the things that people do miss off of their CVs. Company, dates, job title. When I say dates, if you worked in a job and you put on your CV 2008 to 2009, that's very ambiguous. If you could have worked there from January 2008 till December 2009, which is essentially nearly 2 years, or you could have worked there from December 2008 to January 2009, just a couple of months. So I say be specific on the dates, not necessarily 5th of January, but January through to whichever date it would have been. Job title as well. Different companies have different titles, but it's always nice to see what the titles people had. Technologies work with on a day-to-day basis. I have seen CVs with this many skills written in a line. There's no way you can work with that many technologies on a day-to-day basis. You should probably, most CVs that I see 6 technologies maybe. I mean C#, ASP.NET, MVC, SQL. You might be talking about Agile, TDD. 7 or 8 is probably about where you need to be. The type of environment, these days, the majority of the clients that I work with are looking for people working in agile environments. If you're working in an agile environment as well, it's always beneficial to write things such as how long your sprints are. Companies will differ. Some companies randomly do 7-day sprints, 2 weeks. I've seen some recently doing 3 to 4 week sprints. It just gives an idea of the agile environment you're working with. I do a lot of work on companies that do TDD as well, so maybe talk about the TDD approach. Paragraph, bullet points, what you're doing in the job, tell people what you've done. I've known people, again, with sort of 6 years in a job, and they write 2 lines. Expand it a little bit. Even if someone did a 2-month contract, I'd expect more than 2 lines, so just expand that a little bit as well. Your role in the projects themselves, what have you been doing? You know, what were you doing, what was your role? How many team members were there? Where did you sit within that team? And something a lot of people do miss off on their CV is achievements. If you've done something that you're particularly proud of, I would suggest writing it into your CV. You know, if you streamline the process to save the company 100k, you should be writing that stuff down. If you were given the responsibility to start the sprints each time, or it was your responsibility to book everyone's diary, you know, I would put those things in there. Obviously dependent upon level and experience, but some things that it is nice to see when people are given a bit of responsibility as well. It always looks good because it shows people a good employee. Next one, please. Education. It is important to put your education onto your CV. It doesn't really matter as far as I'm concerned if you've got a university education. A lot of employers do put it down as a desirable, but at the same time you've also got work experience is just as good. The reason I've sort of classified it, this is more where I said about leaning towards the international developer communities that I run. One I've tried to do when I give this presentation to them as well is try and give them an understanding behind the degree structure here in the UK in comparison to everywhere else in the world. I didn't realise, to be honest, until I started doing my meetup groups, quite how vast the difference is in education around the world. There's no standardised education. Is anyone else not from the UK? Okay, so we've got three guys. Where are you from, can I ask? Spain. Okay, Spain.
France.
And France, okay. I've just started a French development community, so you might want to come along to that one. But it is very different. There's no, we classify as first class 2, 1, 2, 2, third. In different countries, it is very, very different, which I'll show in a second. But also putting courses, and we spoke about courses earlier. If you have done courses that are relevant, even if it's online courses, whichever type of courses they are, if they're relevant to development, put them on your CV. If you worked in McDonald's when you were at school, at college, and you got 3 stars, not very relevant to getting a development job. However, if you've done an MCE or any kind of professional qualification, Scrum, certifications, that kind of thing, always put them on your CV, along with where you did them as well. So it's very important. This is my attempt at explaining the difference. This is for the Italian guys. So if you didn't know, an Italian degree classification, as we can see here. Oh, yeah, go on.
Zoom in.
It works?
No.
Okay. Well, here, just for your reference, this is 110. 108, I believe it says, and 106. Is that right? No. Somewhere around that level, and that is the weighting and grading for Italian degrees. If you just write that you've got 110 classification, I would bet my mortgage that 90% of recruiters don't know what 110 classification is. Put 110 classification, put in brackets, first class degree. So for the Italian developers, for instance, it's 110 first class, 100 blurred, it's 2-1, and I think it's 100 is a 2-2. So you can just compare it to what it is in the UK. There's a great resource, and I will add it to these slides so that you can see it. There's a great resource on, I think it's one of the .ac websites, and it shows you the equivalent for every country in the world to come into the UK, so you can see the difference of grades. One of the guys that attends my Portuguese developer meetups, we went over this, and he found out that he'd been selling himself short. He'd been telling people he's got a 2-1 when his degree actually worked out to a first class here. So he was quite happy about that. Okay, so this is where I will compare two CVs. If we can please have the PDF first. Okay, so this is a guy, Mattia, who attends my Italian developer meetup. This is how his CV originally looked. I'm not sure how much you can see of that, but it's got the information in his CV. Okay, he's got details about his blog, which wasn't very massively maintained, to be honest with you, but still it's better than nothing. He's got details about the technology, but as you can see, he's not really saying much about what he's done in his job. He's just kind of talking technology. If you can scroll down for me, so. Okay, so as you come down, you've got the information about what he's done. He's not really talked about his education very much. He's first, he's got professional Scrum Master, which is good, but it's kind of like one page selling a senior developer. You know, he should be able to say a lot more than that. So what we did was, I said to Mattia, because I know him, I said to him, look, let's work on your CV. Let's put together something that will maybe sell you just a little bit more. So if we can just go to the Word doc, okay? Yeah, this side. So what we did was we skills matrix. Okay, so if you look there, apart from Scrum, where he's a certified Scrum Master, Mattia is a 4 for MVC. This is his own grade, it's not mine. 4 for MVC, 4 for C#. We've got mock, NUnit, ReSharper, which apparently he loves, TDD, and working with Visual Studio. As you see underneath, we've got 1 for low, 5 for high. We decided to just do it in that manner, just with the cross. I have seen different variations where people somehow, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but also incorporate years experience into the matrix as well. So sort of bringing that out a little more to incorporate the years in to show a little bit more. But we've popped in a personal statement, as you can see there, about why. What's he looking for? What does he want to do? He likes working with Microsoft Web Technology. Brilliant. That's what I recruit for, and the companies that I'm sending his CV to are going to be saying, brilliant, we want people with Microsoft technologies. He wants to work in Agile. Again, clients are going to love what he's looking for. He wants to work in a TDD manner, test first approach to development. These are the sort of things that my clients want to see. If we come down slightly more, then you can see that we've spoke a little bit more about his position. The company he works for at the moment, he's progressed through since 2007, taken up a number of roles, tech lead, Scrum Master, and transferred to the London office in February 2013. Talk about he's working on some projects for the Premier League. They're fully responsive web applications, live competition data, responsible for back-end development, dealing with JSON on the front end, and also the technologies underneath. As you scroll through, you can just see so much more information. What does this guy do? You can see what he does. We've got the, we've gone down. If you come down a little bit more, that's the last page, there we go. So we're talking about his education, his interests as well. Companies always want to see good interests. You know, if you were hiring, you'd love to see somebody that owns their own Pluralsight account, for instance, so they're paying to look for subscription-based services about development. Attending meetup groups with the Italian developers in London, devs in the ditch. The company that he's just taken a position with, actually, they do their own events as well, so he's really into events and things like that, so it sort of sold him a bit better. I hope you can see the differences between the two CVs and how they can get you into companies, should I say. Can go back to the point down, please.
By the way.
Yes, please. Next. Okay, so almost summarising, tips on job searching in London.
if I were a job seeker and I was looking for a development role, I would activate my CV on one job board at a time. One of the guys in one of my mates, I can't remember which one it was now, that said when he first came to the UK, he just thought, right, got to find a job. So he activated his CV on 4 different job boards. The first morning he had 68 phone calls, I think it was. He made a note because it was just going crazy, 68 phone calls. As much as it's tempting to put your CV on all of the boards, I personally would do one at a time and then make a note of the recruiter company name when they call you and get the job specs and URLs on an email. That stops any crossover. When I approach people, I tell them what name the company is and send them a job spec. Some recruiters do try and keep the company names to themselves, which is a bit of a nightmare. So if I've approached you about a job and another recruiter did before me but doesn't tell you where your CV is going to, I do the right job and tell you all about the company, the benefits, what you'll be doing there, and I'll submit your CV and they say, we've already seen your CV. So I always say to people, try and get a note of the recruiter, coming back to activating one at a time, so otherwise you get 100 phone calls in the morning. But make a note, get the job specs and URLs on an email. Also, it gives you a chance to look over the job spec. Is this job right for me? And look at the URL, are the company working in an area that I'm happy to work in as well? So in summary, the CV format, name, phone number, email, location. If you don't want to put your phone number on, it is understandable. Just say, please email me and I'll come back to you. Skills matrix, personal statement, profile links on LinkedIn, Stack Overflow, GitHub. Company name, dates, job title, include the projects that you've worked on. Achievements, education. I have done a little note there on references. What I normally say to people is if you're going to put anything about references, I would just say references can be taken on demand. What you may find is some people will phone your references just because it's a dev manager or a senior developer. So it's probably, I always say it's best to just wait on those. For instance, with Mattia, I know he's referee anyway, but I would now contact that person because I found him a job, not beforehand because it's not needed. Yeah, ensure all fonts are the same family and size. The amount of CVs I see with big fonts, small fonts, different fonts, some bold, some not, is absolutely crazy. Just press Control A and just make, I don't know what you've got on a Mac, but if you just make everything the same font, same size, you might want certain things to stand out a bit more, as we've got like in summary at the top there, but you know, it does look very amateur if your CV is in loads of different fonts. Guys probably know this, but be prepared to carry out technical tests, sometimes online, sometimes on your own machine, so ensure that you have the relevant setup installed. I am told that it is a massively London thing to do technical tests for interviews. Everywhere else that I speak to people from, they don't tend to do technical tests as part of the interview process. They tend to ask a lot of technical questions in the interview, get a feel for the person and say, yes, this person will be right. So technical tests, every single company I work with asks for technical tests. Majority are done in your own time. As I say, sometimes they're online, so you log into a certain portal, carry out the solution. Sometimes you have to actually install, so you need your environment installed in order to actually carry out the test. I've known some tests are half an hour. I've known one company that does a 20-hour test. Yeah, they reward you with a £25 voucher at the end of it to say thanks for your time, which is better than nothing. A lot of companies don't. But yeah, there are some very, very long tests out there. To be fair, that company in particular, I mean, if you get the job there, it is a superb role dealing with market data, so it's very, very good. But there is a lot of difference in terms of that as well. So thank you for your time. There's all my details, if anyone wants to take them down. As I say, I do run AB Recruit, that's my recruitment company, and also ID in London is the events that I do. And all my contact details are there. I will send this out again. As mentioned, I run groups for Italian, Portuguese speaking, Polish, South African, and French developers in London. Asking for information if anyone has any questions, either about the presentation, CVs, or just recruiters in general, which normally tends to be the questions that come up, please feel free.
Thank you. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah.
If you see a phone from abroad, a foreigner.
It depends. I've had this conversation actually recently. Did I have a conversation with you? No, I did have this conversation recently. If the number is abroad, personally, the only time I will ring people when they're in another country if they actually explicitly state on their CV, I am moving to London. There's a lot of people that are living abroad who want to move to London or have this idea in their head that they want to come to London. And when you speak to them, they expect the company to pay for their flight, hotel, food, everything. If you're going to relocate to London from, say, Madrid, Milan, I think you need to really look into it and be prepared to pay for things yourself, because there aren't many companies out there now that offer relocation packages. I would, if you did put the details on there and said, I'm coming to London on the 14th, I would 100% ring that person. Otherwise, I would probably send an email and say, what's your situation? And 99 times out of 100, they say they're just testing the water. They want to see what it's like, what sort of salaries they can get. Okay.
I was going to ask if you have any particular tips for novice developers. I mean, here they do, you know about Maker. Of course they do. So, just from building alone, you probably have a lot of people looking for work after the 3-month course.
Yeah.
That maybe, kind of were a florist before, or, graphic designer, or, kind of maybe drove a milk truck. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are there any particular tips you would give those?
The main tips that I would give is sort of going back to the sort of GitHub and Stack Overflow stuff. I think if you're junior and trying to break in, you're up against a lot of other people that are trying to break in. The main thing that I notice with people that are more junior is they never seem to know what they want to do. If you've got a clear idea in your mind of what you want to do, and you then back that up with code, you will find it a lot easier. If a lot of people that I do speak to say, what do you want to do? I don't know. Which is sometimes why senior roles are a lot easier to sort of source for. But I would go down the Stack Overflow, GitHub, and when you're applying for jobs, make sure that's prominent and say, chase that phone, make a call to either the recruiter or the company and say, I've sent you my CV, I know I don't have any commercial experience, have a look at my profile online, look at my GitHub, look at what I can do, forward that to your line manager, tell your line manager to look at that. That is the main thing. If you can show some code, that's what you need, definitely.
Okay. You think like online portfolios as well always help, or?
On more sort of the graphics side?
No, just generally kind of like, because it just, like, I want to get into like general kind of HTML, front-end coding and stuff, so I'm trying to build up kind of personal portfolio.
Of sites that you've built.
Portfolio for code.
Yeah.
So of something that, like the things that you've built. Yeah, they are a good idea. So long as they're well written. I can think of one recent example where there is currently a guy on the market and he's looking for a position, and he sells himself as a freelance developer who has been developing solutions for 5 years. Please check my website. And if you click on that website, it is awful. So long as your site that you've written renders well, is responsive, and doesn't contain loads of typos, for instance, then yes, totally. Put the link on your CV. Show what you can do. If, however, it's not that great, and always ask your friends to look over it as well. I see, for instance, a user sitting there with a Windows machine. These guys have got their Macs. Ask them to just check the site and make sure that it displays how you want it to on mobiles, or a lot of people these days they will get. A lot of people do a lot of emailing on the train. So making sure things display well on a smaller device is very beneficial.
Cool. Brilliant.
Question.
Sure.
As a recruiter, what do you expect on the website? I mean, for example, I put my blog. What do you expect on my blog, apart from my projects?
Inane ramblings of a technical mind, I would say. Just talking about what you've been doing
recently. So maybe talking through code samples. What if you've been doing a project, what are you learning to code with?
Well, I'm learning to code from working from like paid providers.
Okay.
Employer.
So what sort of languages?
So there's Perl, there's JavaScript, server-side JavaScript.
Okay. So talking about things like that. So if you're creating something that's more, I suppose, blog focused, so more sort of what you're doing with your time. In that situation, I would expect to see you're talking show some screenshots of code you've been working on, or maybe why you decided to use a certain language instead of another. When it comes to blogs, I don't expect any structure.
So we can like just talk about anything as long as it's technical.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be technical. Just make sure that it's relevant. I mean, you might say that you've recently bought a Chromecast and you're trying to see how you can stream from how the protocols work to stream from one thing to the other. As long as it's technical and relevant, as I say, just like mind, the things you're doing in your mind that are put online as a blog.
Can I just make one, because I've had a blog for years, and this year I've really pushed LinkedIn, and I find if you post on your LinkedIn that you've updated a blog, that's really good. A lot of recruiters will see you've got that will raise your profile because they see you've got an active blog, and that's a big idea.
Yeah. So when you go into LinkedIn, you probably never searched really on LinkedIn for people. When you go into people on LinkedIn, it will show you can add websites. So that's obviously what you've got there is like a URL.
Because it means the recruiters are aware of you. They also know they can click the link.
It makes it seem more that you're a person than a robot, I suppose. At the end of the day, things like Twitter, blogs, what else was I saying? Going back to Stack Overflow, GitHub, and stuff like that. But it gives more of a picture of you than just a few lines of text, definitely.
In terms of, I mean, that is kind of related to that actually. In terms of like from a psychology point of view, I guess maybe there's the technical side showing what you can do. What about showing what kind of person you are to get on with? Because I mean, you're going to have to work with other people presumably. So, is there anything that
I would say that's extremely hard to put on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would approach that.
I think the personal interview is for that. To check how are you personal.
Yeah, it would be very, very, very tough to, everyone puts things like, I'm a happy person who works well both individually and has a team.
Sure.
I'm a big team player. I don't know how you would get more of that across. The only things I suppose are interests, to put the interests on your blogs or on your CV.
Yeah.
I once had a situation where I had a guy who, the applicant was a registered pilot, and I didn't know this at the time, but so was the client, and I sent his CV to the client, and it turns out that they actually knew each other and flew in the same flying club. So they had that interest. He got the job, which was great. But, things like that, if you put an interest, not just technical stuff, you might put that you're into football, for instance.
Yeah.
If you're into football, and I've then got a position that's working for the FA, I mean, I'd love to work for the FA, I love football, so I suppose that can get that sort of personality across.
Yeah, I wasn't so much speaking about the CV, more little things like the pointers like, if you're stacking your answering questions of other people, maybe if you're answering with a bit more humility, then say sometimes I see stuff answered and it's kind of not as helpful. Like maybe little things like that sometimes maybe programmers fall, down.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit. Personally, I feel there's a big transition at the moment between how people perceive developers and how they actually are. The way people perceive developers is still a dozen people in the basement without any natural light, just coding. As we all know, is very different now. You need to be client-facing. You need to have that element about you. But to actually get that across on words, I think is quite difficult. I don't know how I would do it.
If you've got client-facing experience, then, for example, even though it might seem relevant, is it good to put that sort of thing in?
Yeah. I don't see why not. I think you'll find someone that's far more extrovert if they worked in a pub when they were at uni, for instance, than someone that didn't. So yeah, totally. I'm just trying to think on the spot how I would get that across. Yeah. I don't really know. I'll tell you, if you can give me your email address, I would like to think about that and perhaps send you over an email, or maybe update the group as well, because I don't quite know how I would approach that, but it'd be interesting. There was a big thing a couple of years ago on video CVs, which seems to have sort of fallen by the wayside, but they were looking at actually adding a video to your CV, so you could sit and talk about what you do and sort of get more of your personality across in things, but it never really took off.
Right.
Sometimes companies do use Skype interviews and things like that, but it never really took off on the video interview, to be honest.
Right. Cool.
Unless you could embed that in your CV somehow.
Yeah, yes.
A video of you waving and thumbs up and smiling.
Always put a link to YouTube with, I don't know, working on a project, working with other developers.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. If you put a link on your CV to something on YouTube, that could work. Show it like as a webcam up here showing you collaborating with other developers. Yeah. Something like that could definitely work.
Cool. Okay, great. Thanks.
Anyone else before you guys get on your code?
Is there a good way of approaching the salary subject? Because sometimes the offers are like competitive, market rate, depending on experience. You don't want to lose your time, or make the other person lose the time.
Yeah.
But it's quite difficult to
Yeah, that's a question I do come up with quite often. What I suggest in that situation is that I sort of market myself as a specialist recruiter, so I know about salaries in my market that I deal with. I know other people, for instance, that recruit for Ruby developers and PHP, so they know their market a lot better. I think the absolute basic way, what's this job paying? Because I know people that have gone down to interviews and they've been looking for, say, 45k, and then they get a job offer at 30, and they've taken half a day off of work twice to go to 2 interviews, and then it's not come up. So I suppose that you don't want to be straight out first question, what is the salary? Because then you should look like you're moving for salary reasons. But I would suggest if you get an interview booked, I would be hard with whoever it is that you're booking it with and just say, I just want to check, this has happened to me in the past, can I just ask what the salary level is? And if they say it's way below what you're, or in fact way above what you're looking for, there's normally a reason. There will be a reason for that difference. So I would definitely, the only way to do is to ask, either in person or in an email. It's fine.
Is there a good way of finding out what the salary ranges are likely to be for what you want to do?
There's a very good website. It's called IT. I can see everyone sort of. IT Jobs Watch, as in time. .co.uk. There we go. That's it there. So if you type in your keyword, that will tell you what you should be looking at on perm. And if you look at the tab on the top, there's contract as well. I mainly do perm, but that will tell you that the average Node.js developer is only sort of 45 to 50k. I would say that's a little bit high, personally, for particularly going entry level. If you're experienced, then that is about right. It's pretty much on. Yeah, it's not bad. Obviously, dependent upon experience. I mean, someone where that's saying 45 to 50k, there you've got to have a couple of years. Come from the sort of JavaScript HTML background before. Again, it's not my specialist area, but that's a very, very good site. Very good. I use it all the time. And it tells you, as you see, you can see the rank year on year, and it will do that for everything you go to. If you go, if you can just go back a couple of tabs that you were a moment ago, just the main permanent jobs when we first ran down. If you go back one more, again, okay. So it shows you the rank of where things are sort of sitting, where they've been. If you can just type C# into the job title keywords there for me. Yeah, just saying. So you can see where, I mean, C# ranked number 5, C# developers 51, coming all the way down, junior C# application developer. But it gives you the rank, the average salary percentage, matching job ads. I mean, there's like 18,000 jobs there. But yeah, that's a really, really good site to give you an idea of salaries.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else? Yeah, go
apologies.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if you guys have the chance to introduce yourselves. Do you have any idea why, at least in my experience, most of the recruiters are very keen on not showing which company it is? They might give out the salary up front without any issues.
Yeah.
But I assume that there might be some companies that want to keep that secret for a longer period for some reason. But from the majority of recruiters, they're not interested in sharing the companies up front. Do you have any idea why or?
Yeah, I knew that this sort of question would come up. I was waiting for it. The main reason is, for instance, I work really hard to get good clients and good relationships with my clients.
Yeah.
And other recruiters do the same thing. If one of my clients are hiring and I tell you about it and then you tell the other recruiter, they will then approach my clients. That's it.
A recruiter won't share which company they're working for. Then they'll ask you, which company are you applying to? Sorry?
Yeah.
First thing,
I disagree with it, and I don't know if you were in the room when I did say that. I don't work in that way. I send you a link to the company's website and a job spec, no matter what. I like to work in that way.
The first thing it came to my mind as soon as someone asked, after I asked, was, I'm sorry, that's confidential.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to them. It's up to the individual as well. I spoke to a guy last week who was coming over from Italy, just for the interview. He booked his flight, paid for his flight, and I said to him, "Okay, so where are you interviewing? What companies are you going to?" Just out of curiosity, because he's very, very specialised what he does. And he said, "I don't know." And I said to him, "What do you mean you don't know?" He said, "Oh, the agent's going to meet me at the airport and take me along." And I thought, well, I just thought, I'm really hoping, I haven't caught up with him yet, but I really hope that has happened.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't think, I did say to him, I personally wouldn't fly from Italy to London and not know the company. I mean, you can't even do any background research. You've got an interview booked and you're flying in, you haven't been able to do any research on the company, and that's massively important. If anyone ever interviews anyone, you want them to know about your company, where your company's been and what they're doing. If you don't know the name of the company, it's horrendous, to be honest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A bit longer than 15 minutes. I hope it was beneficial.
Yeah.
I really do.
That was really good.
Thank you.